Kia, chosen one, Kia. I love that song. Is it bad that I love the Kia song? Kia, brilliant one, Kia, do 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 do. Like, I find myself singing it. It is bad, isn't it? You're looking at me in a way that suggests it's bad.
I could not sing the Kia chosen one Kia song at all. No,
I think it's the like, I was in a choir when I was a kid, and I think it's got that really strong, like, standing and belting it out choral, sort of vibe to it, which attracts me to the song. Let's move quickly on.
I don't know where you've heard it other than in the preview for this. Did they play it during the thing?
Well, they played it in the previously on,
yes.
But also it's like a major Patricia Arquette moment in the first series where she sings them it, and Milchek says he uses a word, one of his long words. He uses a word like to say it's like a punitive version of the Kia hymn. And so, yeah, she sings it in a very angry way at them. But I really like it. It rings true to me as a religious anthem. But as I said...
Can we stick with Lord of the Dance or Shine Jesus Shine?
I quite like Lord of the Dance. Oh, yeah. Maybe I was... You know what? I wasn't thinking of Lord... I was thinking of Lord of the Dance as in...
Michael Flatley.
Michael Flatley. I was about to go into... Really loved Lord of the Dance. Was it called Lord of the Dance of Michael Flatley?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, it was, wasn't it? Yeah, I was getting that wrong. Anyway, episode 7, Sweet Vitriol.
That's all very well, but it's episode 8.
Is it?
Yes.
I better get it right on the old show notes. Episode 8, Sweet Vitriol. How many episodes are there going to be of this series?
Well, we know there's 2 more.
Right.
So how many would that be?
That would make 10. Even I can do those maths.
That's quite good mental arithmetic for you.
That is good for me. Mark isn't being like what would you call that?
Patronising
would be the word. Mark isn't even being patronising. I'm sure I have dyscalculia. I'm sure I self-diagnosed dyscalculia. But I'm terrible at maths. So 2 + 8 is quite a stretch. I will have to get my little fingers out and count on my hands. How are you feeling about this episode?
I'm kind of torn. Because I feel like if I wasn't doing a podcast on this where I had to come on and talk about it, I'd be quite happy to just spend an hour on Mrs. Cobell. Not even an hour, like 40 minutes, because this was a really quick episode. Now that I have to come on and talk about it, I don't really care about the lore of Lumin and the Egans. And there's some revelations in this, but I don't really see it that affects what I want from the show, which is innies and outies, and innies becoming outies, and innies finding out about their outie life, and so, and it I didn't really want another episode of the third day, but I got it. I think it was a great episode of TV. It's just not like I said last week. I want more of our innies. Like, I want more Mark and Helly, like, giving each other little doughy eyes and things like that, and making the little tent. Yes. And that's been it's been 3 weeks now, because there's 2 clear weeks between these episodes, and that's I feel bad coming on each week going, I'm quite disappointed, because it's really good television, and if I didn't have to come on and talk about it, I'd probably just forget about it and walk on. And go, oh, that was a nice hour of television. But it's not what I want from this show. It's definitely not what I want. And having to wait another week for this, then I find it quite frustrating. That
seems to be a thematic thread, doesn't it, throughout this second series? And we're hearing it on, our friends at the Cinemile, other people when we're talking to them, and people who are contacting us as well. This idea that whilst this is brilliant television, and there's so much good to be, there's so much positivity, isn't there? And we're not coming away going, well, this is just rubbish and we're never going to come back to this again. There is a frustration that it's not what we want to do. Yes. It's not where we want to be. I have to say that I saying you enjoyed this episode, I think, is quite a difficult one because it's so dour. Everything is blue and grey. There's a lot of horror sort of added to it. I mean, the bit where Cobell goes into her deceased mother's room really had me worried that there was going to be like some jump scares and that sort of thing.
Was there any horror though?
I felt there
was.
was.
I think there's more gloom than horror.
It felt horror to me. It felt like it was. I see what you mean. I see that, you know, there wasn't a big ghouly thing coming out of the way, and there wasn't a lot of blood. There wasn't, you know, but it felt like horror. I found it very disconcerting to watch.
Okay.
So I've lost my train of thought now. I'm trying to think, how can I explain that this is horror to Mark without it being horror? I really enjoyed it as a character study. I really, really love the character of Miss Cobell. I think Harmony Cobell is a fascinating character. She's someone who's been brought up within this pseudo religion, you know, this cult. She's been she's been, as we found out here, a victim of child labour. She's been indoctrinated by a family member. Her mother seems to have not been up with it, but someone who, this sissy character, first of all, I thought it was a sister, but I think she's older. I think it's like an aunt.
You know what? I've spent most of this episode trying to work this. It's kind of like, you know, when we watch Pointless and we see these two people and we're like, there's that split second of you make that judgment of whether they're father and daughter or husband and wife, and it's like, what are they? Yeah, I've come to terms with, because she said your mother, so therefore I don't, or it might also be sister-in-law. So it might be father's sister, because obviously her last name is Cobell.
Yes.
That we clunkily saw on a plaque.
But I like that. I like, at least we got something, you know, that we've got the Cobell name, that there's something there, even if we didn't get the full,
I think you
were my mother's sister.
I think we got the Harmony age 12, it was a family home and things like that.
Well, at first I thought it was maybe like a foster home or some sort of care facility that she'd been put into. Anyway, we'll park that for a moment. I really like this as understanding who Cobell is, and you see in this episode that she is at heart, as we all are when things, you know, occur to us, she's a child. That's where all of that anger comes from, that shouting, that repressed rage. She's a child at heart, and she's an abused child and a motherless child. I still don't get where the Charlotte thing comes from, and the birth tag that we saw that she had in series 1, unless her mother was called Charlotte. You're rolling your eyes.
No, I'm not rolling it. I'm just trying to think. I have no recollection.
We've talked about this before. We have talked about, there was like this little tag that you put around
on
babies.
Podcast?
Yeah, on the podcast.
Okay,
we have.
I do kind of remember that.
And it was next to the breathing equipment. Now we get where the breathing equipment has come from. That's clearly from her mother's, you know.
Just to be clear, I had no recollection of the breathing equipment up until going back and seeing the preview for a second time, because there was a couple of things I wanted to double check on before we.
It was in her shrine.
Back.
So this.
I'd forgotten about the shrine.
So this thing. I think that it's probably.
What do people who've not watched this 2 months, like 2 weeks before the season started, do?
But I think this is where, like, you're not bothered about that, so your brain hasn't held on to that information.
Yeah.
I love that. I really want to know what's in the shrine. I want to understand where she comes from, what happened at the factory, who this person is. My eyes were wide open when we actually went to this outdoor space that wasn't anything to do with, you know, some of our regular characters. So I really, really liked this episode. But this is coming round full circle. I understand what everyone is saying about this lack of consistency and tonally how it's changing, but also directorially how it's changing. This is such a different episode to last week. And like you're saying, we've had a Gemma episode, we've had a Harmony episode. We, you know, when are we going to get back to Bert and Irving? When are we gonna go back to Dylan and his wife? You know, all of those things are still right in the back of my head, and we've only got 2 episodes left. I do not think we're going to be wrapping stuff up here. Yes, there are revelations, and you can see how it goes back to plot at the end with the phone call and the whole idea that she's the person that created Severance. But it's a lot of character work, isn't it? These last two episodes. So I do get it.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is I don't really care how the sausage is made. Like, it adds an interesting spin on on a character that we already knew, that she was the person who invented two things that, the whole severance procedure, and then the two things that we coincidentally have heard of, the overtime contingency and the Glasgow block.
We didn't know that before, though.
No,
we only found that out.
She just mentions the two things that we've actually heard of.
It was a bit clunky when she did the Glasgow block. I did think that. I was like, she could have chosen anything else. Yeah. There's so many other things.
And to me, it would be more interesting if she mentioned something else.
Yes.
Because that would, I hate to go back to Lost again, but on the Blastall map, there was hints of the flame station. It's like, what's the flame station?
Yeah.
If you say the kangaroo contingency... then then that's why they've got pouches.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're never going to see the goats again, are we? This is it's getting further and further away from that core mystery.
Well, I mean,
and that core idea.
If we're not going to see the goats again, then that really tempers my thoughts on the show, because that is put in for weirdness' sake in that point. And why have we wasted an episode going there to get Gwendolyn Christie in and some people dressed as fake goats?
It really makes me believe, and maybe it's the long-term thing, that we are heading into a season 4, that we are a 3 and a 4, that this is a long-term show now. This is not just we've had series 1, we're bringing it back for series 2. I think there is a plan, with the creators for this to go on for longer than this series.
Oh, I mean, season 3's already been announced. Like, that's,
right, okay.
Yes,
that's it. Yeah, I feel it's even further than that. I feel that they're throwing the ball out to much further along the lines, and that's why we're feeling this sort of like, it's not going to be wrapped up, because it isn't going to be wrapped up.
I mean, the difference is that 4, 5, 6 season arc something where I want to follow along.
Yeah, I agree.
And we keep on saying I've got a lot of faith in this show, and I am giving it more chance than I would a lot of things, because alarm bells are ringing at every single step on this for the going into bullshit territory and flying up its own arse. And I have to say, my alarm bells are not ringing on this at all. I think we're probably diverging on this particular episode more so than we have done in the past. Yeah,
I like the idea. I'm getting to the episode now. I like this idea of the town that Lumen puts money into, the ether factory, but also that causes addiction issues. Clearly, many people in the town have these breathing problems as well. Cobell's mother's died from some sort of respiratory illness. It's satirical. It's looking at the way that corporate entities will come and do things that suggest that they're going to be benefiting and this looked like a beautiful coastal sort of fishing village. It looked like it could have had a lot of life once upon a time.
Oh, yeah.
They come in, they say they're going to invest, and actually what they do is create more poverty and long-term health conditions for the people, and then the town really suffers. So I like that. I like how we were going back to Imogen, or as Cobell calls her, Imogen, which I was like, that's an interesting way of saying it. And Kia, and how they met and got married at the ether. So it made sense to me that we were referring back to that. And I liked the expansion going into Sissy, this idea of the 9, and how people within a religion or a cult or some organisation, there'll be lots of little offshoots of it, won't there? There were these pegs on the wall in the house which were 9 pegs, and there were lots of references to 9 things. Now, we didn't get a a full detail of what this 9 is, but she was dressed in these sort of like robes. She's clearly really into it. She's fully immersed in Egan and Lumin and all of that, and I quite like seeing these. It almost really reminded me of the sort of people who are like the not the bishops, but you know what I mean, like priests and those sorts of things in their robes, who are really, really into it. So that's what I like, that it had folklore elements to it. There was a lot of that one where the bees, not the bees.
Wicker Man.
Yeah. Had Wicker Man, vibes to it, which I really enjoyed. So I didn't feel that we were going. I didn't think they were just throwing loads and loads of. You talked about lore before. I didn't feel they were chucking in loads of new lore. It felt very different to the Ortbo, where people were
doing stuff in,
putting their seed into the ground and getting their eyes gouged out for it. It didn't really feel like that to me. This felt much more grounded and much more based in reality in terms of people getting involved in these organisations.
Okay, yeah, that is fair. When you start talking about the 9 and there's 9 things everywhere,
I know.
I'm literally wanting to put on 0 Day and seeing the next episode, because I just, that does not interest me in the slightest. Give me Dylan calling someone the king of fucks.
Yeah. I get you. Yeah. I think you can have both, though, can't you?
But
in these sorts of shows,
we're not getting both, though, are we? We have just spent
no, you're right.
40 minutes of pure background. This feels like an appendix. This feels like a George R.R. Martin House of the Dragon, which you like, and
it had some. House of the Dragon has some really, really good stuff about women and birth and pregnancy that I think is very important to have on television. But you know what I mean. I know what you mean. Yeah, it's an additional.
It feels like they have made an episode from a footnote, and I want to drive on with the main plot.
Well, I think you're getting there, aren't you? No, from the end of this episode, she's driving back. She's going to see Mark and Devon.
Sorry, I'll rephrase that. I wanted to carry on with the main plot last week.
Well, here's a question for you. Would you have preferred it if we had sort of this sort of stuff intermingled with a sort of a Day at the Office
Probably
episode?
Vastly.
Right,
yeah.
Okay.
This... I don't know whether that would make it more palatable for me, but we've now spent 2 episodes and we've not seen any of my favourite characters apart from Mark. But we've not even seen any Mark at all. We've just seen outie Mark. And this will work for a lot of people that aren't me. And I fully understand that. That's absolutely fine. I took a hit, I criticised last week and then looked at the rating and it was 9.8 on IMDb. Got into work and everyone was like, "Oh, that was amazing." I was like, "Oh, I didn't really like it." So, yeah, this isn't for me. This episode, it's very well done, and like I said, I respected it for what it was.
Didn't you think the cinematography was beautiful with it? Well, everyone at home, Mark's just shrugging his shoulders.
But so are a lot of things.
And I thought the use of music was really good. They actually had the Kia anthem at the beginning. You look distressed.
No, but cinematography and music is I've gone out my way. This is something that I look forward to each week. That is the problem. And you know what? If I want to watch a film with great cinematography, I can put that on during the week. I am building up to a Friday to watch this episode, and I find this a disappointment because it's not dealing with the story that I want to watch. I can't put that any. It's a very well made episode. Yeah, brilliant. Give me some Dylan calling someone the king of fucks. Give me Bert. I'll take Bert.
You'll take Bert.
Bert and Fields.
Yeah. The one criticism I have of this episode is that I couldn't understand what anyone was saying. Honestly, I'm going to have to go back and watch it with the subtitles on. And there was one point where we rewound it and put the subtitles on. Cobell talks in this sort of sidey out your mouth thing, but everyone else was very quiet and very sort of mumbly. And I'm sure there are things that I've missed, things that you will not care about, because I'm sure there will be like tiny little bits of lore that you don't care for. But I would like to go back and have a look and see.
I went into this podcast quite
quite
positive on the podcast. You turned me against it by
you started off saying, yeah, it's fine. Not for me, but fine. Yeah, sorry. I think this is the danger, isn't it? And I do think this. Sometimes the danger with these shows is you can get so into it, and this is coming from a couple who do a weekly instant reaction podcast, but you can get so into it that it actually becomes bigger than it was probably meant to be. And like you say, if you were just as a casual viewer, if you just watched this, went to bed, didn't think about it ever again, didn't look like you didn't, like me, spend the first few minutes before you put the podcast on Googling everything and IMDbing who all the people were in the episode. If you just watched it and went away and just went, yeah, it was fine, that would probably be a lot healthier.
Can I make a confession for this episode?
Oh, go on.
Like, this is gonna be one that goes down in. People might actually switch off when they hear this. I went through a great amount of the episode thinking that the character of, and what's his name?
Hampton?
Is that his
the bloke that she's with?
Yes.
James LeGros.
Jim LeGros.
Yeah.
Yes. I thought that was Dr. Mauer from last week.
I wondered why you said Dr. Mauer to me before we started recording.
Yeah, it was. I really thought that was him.
And I just completely ignored you because I thought you were going off on a tangent.
Yeah, and that was when I thought, might not be him, actually.
No, I think that's a poor young lad who was made to work in the ether factory and is now grown up.
It was more interesting to me when I thought that... that
was Dr. Mauer, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, James LeGros... He's definitely one of them actors. I'm seeing a lot on Facebook. You know those shitty memes that you get shared? You don't really go on Facebook anymore, do you? There's you just get shitty memes that are absolute content farming and things like that. But they're like, oh, start a pack of actors who you know but can't name, and half of them are like, Toby Jones and James Hong. So
okay.
I can literally name them.
Yeah.
And, maybe I'm a specialist on this, but I think I might know, Kieran Hines, even if I wasn't.
I have seen him on stage in Broadway.
You have. Humble brag.
I know.
James LeGros is definitely someone who I recognise and couldn't name up until...
He's been in loads of stuff as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely loads. Zodiac, you told me before.
Friends.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's creepy in Friends.
Mark, I have nothing else to say about this episode. Are you happy to leave it there?
I'm just looking through my... I mean, a lot of these things are about Dr. Mauer and what he's doing there, so a lot of my notes...
I thought you would want to end this pretty early.
And a lot of these are me debating whether Sissy is mum, sister, ?
I think she's the sister of the mother.
Mum's room, so definitely not mum.
Is that your note?
Sissy's room, ? Lots of tat.
Yes, because I did think she was a mum at the beginning. But no, dead mum.
Lovely light, so yeah, I did think the cinematography was great.
I made an excellent point, and it's in your notes.
And then... if this goes into the Four Tempers, I might switch off.
I mean, she did talk about malice and woe quite a lot. I know, every time those words come up.
Dr. Mauer sniffing solvents.
Not him.
Harmony and Mauer kiss.
Not him. Oh, dear. Good.
Door in the Hill. Join the dots for me. How did she find out that her stuff was under the door under the hill? So
I think it's the ether has made her done something to her brain where she could... Because you remember when he comes in and she was like, just let me think. When you can't think. I don't know if you ever get this, but you just get complete brain block and you're looking for something and your brain just won't open to let in possibilities. And I think she's had this ether. I think the ether has made her remember or made her consider the actions of Sissy, and she just had that revelation of she wouldn't throw away the things that were so important around Kia and around the Egans. She just wouldn't, because these are tokens of esteem within that community. So she wouldn't have got rid of them. She would have got rid of all of the peripheral stuff, like the toys and things like that, but she wouldn't have got rid of those. And she knows that there's this cellar, because from her childhood, she knows there's a cellar. She's lived there, you know, as a kid. So she goes, and it's almost like going, it's a bit like saying, well, you know me, you know where I put everything, up in the loft. If I just don't want to see it, I just put it in the loft. And it's a bit like you going, oh God, of course she's put it in the loft. It's that sort of revelation.
That's some excellent headcanon that you've joined the dots there.
I think it's very good.
I mean, I thought I was missing something by the fact she just decided it, but yeah,
No, I think it's the ether that does it. And I thought that when he was there with it, I thought, oh, this is going to lead to a revelation. This is how she comes to, you know, it was such an obvious plot device to me of have this drug and the drug will lead to something.
So, okay, before we go, now is an interesting point at which we, you know, for the end of the season, we're in last 2 episode territory. We feel like we are going to edge towards at least some sort of storytelling that I will like in part of these episodes. And we better, because we're going to do a lot of effort next week to record a podcast. Why has she done this trip?
So for me, I think she's looking for capital against Lumen. I think she, you know, Ragabi said she's a soldier. She's Lumen through and through. I think we're seeing now in the conversation that she's having with a member of her family, potentially, she's now turned against them. She wants to take them down. She knows she's in danger. So I think you've got a Cobell that needs evidence or needs some sort of capital. She will have these plans as well that might help Mark with reintegration. That's the only thing I can think of, is that she needs this to bring them down in some sort of way.
Because it feels to me, I feel like I'm criticising this even more now, but it feels to me like she's conveniently got something that would help Mark before knowing that she would need it. Mm-hmm. Now, I understand that about the capital. Surely having that makes her more of a target for
things I'm sure.
like that.
Yeah.
And I didn't know the answer when I asked the question, but it feels to me like she's got something very conveniently that is going to be immediately useful to our main character.
Yes.
And I will remain to see on that.
I don't understand how it. When I'm talking about capital, I don't. It's not like oh my God, this is gonna revolute, because
in the preview,
does it really matter who?
In the preview, they showed Helly in the diner and he said, "Oh, you invented all this," and that was my dad.
Yes.
And I went back because I didn't understand. I couldn't remember what was said, but I didn't understand what part of that scene in the diner, because I was trying to work out, like, you know, you get 10 minutes into this, you're like, oh, this is going to be a complete harmony episode, and I was like, no, but they showed Helly and Mark in the diner, so I was kind of expecting there would be some kind of reference to that. There wasn't. It was just something that was mentioned on that, so that must play into, no, I invented this.
Yes. So because you get a flashback, don't you, of him standing at the party. Yes. And they say, this is in the preview, and they say, oh, yeah, he invented it. But clearly he didn't. She invented it, and they have taken... Which makes sense now, where Helena is saying... Oh, Helena. I always say it different ways. Helena is saying, like, you've overestimated your contribution or something like that, overegged your contribution and not counted your blessings. And it makes sense to me now why Harmony Cobell wants to be on the severed floor and has to be on the severed floor, because she created it. It still doesn't mean she's a goodie. I mean, she created this awful thing, and they're using it for all sorts of weird and wonderful. I mean, she, you know, it's almost like a redemption story, but at the same time, you know that she knew about Gemma. You know that she knew Gemma was being tortured downstairs, and she was living next door to Mark. And you know, she's not a good person, but I like that there's so much of a complexity to the character. I don't understand why these sheets of paper that can be so easily, as we saw, chucked in a fire.
Went a bit. That was my final note. Almost went a bit Little Women there.
Right, let's wrap it up.
Okay.
And see what comes next week in many, many different ways.
Yes.
Stick with us for next week. it will go right or it will go wrong.
Yeah, this might be backup recording territory. We need to make it record. Yeah, for those that are new to the podcast, I'm away next week. I'm going to America on holiday. I'm going to visit Salt's Neck, and I'm going on a tour of the old ether factory there, and I'm going to find a door in the hill.
Yeah, it's what everyone wants.
So I'm getting up after o'clock in the morning US time to watch this, and although I think this is released on a Thursday night in America.
Yes, I think that's right, because the American podcasts are like magically
they're
midnight.
there when I get up.
Yeah, they're when I get up.
Which might...
that might be helpful.
Yes.
I will watch it at a nice normal time on Friday, and then through time we will meet via the internet and try to record a podcast.
And we're going deep into the lore of how you don't understand time zones
That's
when we're on the podcast.
That is right. I still think you travel through time when you go abroad. Mark has to explain to me every time that just because he's like however many hours behind, that doesn't mean he's in the past. Which I'm still getting my head around. Anyway.
We shall see you next time.
See you next time.